Good evening and welcome to the Duneland Exchange Club membership meeting. My name is Lorelei Weimer and I am the president of the Exchange Club. I'm excited tonight because we have a special guest, which is Dr. Chip Pettit, who is the superintendent of the Duneland School Corporation. Dr. Pettit joined Duneland Schools on July 1st, 2019. He is a native of Northwest Indiana and graduated from Crown Point High School. He went on to get his bachelor's degree from Valparaiso University, his master's degree from Indiana University Northwest, and his PhD from Ball State University. He has a wealth of experience in the field of education. He has been a teacher, a middle school athletic director, the dean of students, the director of student services. He has coached three different sports and was the football head coach for Crown Point High School for 11 years. And he was also the principal of Crown Point High School. Tonight, Dr. Pettit is going to be talking about the facilities plan that they are proposing for the Duneland schools. It's a very comprehensive plan, and it's going to take Duneland schools 20 years into the future. So we're excited to learn more about this. So welcome, Dr. Pettit.
Okay, thanks, Lorelei, and thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be here tonight and talk a little bit about the Duneland schools. Can everybody hear me okay? Maybe just give me a thumbs up. Okay, perfect. Here in a moment, I'm going to take over the screen with a presentation, then I'm probably going to turn off my camera. So as we go through the presentation, I'm probably going to talk maybe 25, 30 minutes. If at any time you want to ask a question, interject, I think sometimes this works a little bit better as a conversation as opposed to presentations. So I'll kind of divide this up into two parts. One, talking about facility improvements and what we're proposing. Then we'll take a break and maybe take some questions or offer some more specifics, and then we'll talk about financing to finish up. Does that sound okay? Okay. So I have turned off my video, but I'm now going to share my screen. Okay, if you haven't already, here in just a moment, you should be able to see the screen.
And we do see it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so to get started, this was a presentation that I gave to the school board at our March 1st board meeting. And what I'm doing here is I'm providing solutions to some of our facility needs, which I outlined at the February board meeting. So it was set up in a way that talked about our needs, and then we came back the next month talking about solutions. As we look at this first slide, I think it gives you an idea, as you know, that we have 9 school buildings in the district serving over 5,800 students and 750 employees. And I think this helps us, not only take a look at our buildings, but look at the square feet, our current enrollment, our classrooms not in use, the industry standard for square feet, and then how we project that to inform decisions as we move into the future. I think a couple of things stick out. One is the age of our buildings. 7 of our 9 buildings are over 50 years old. Our oldest building, Chesterton Middle School, was built in 1955. At the other end of the spectrum, our new Chesterton High School opened now 22 years ago. And while the school district has done a very good job of maintaining our schools, the reality is that many of the mechanical systems within each building are past their expected life, and the teaching and learning environment upgrades are really needed throughout the district. Second, you may notice that we have a lot of extra space in 2 of our buildings, Chesterton Middle School and Liberty Intermediate School. From the space that we have versus what we need for our enrollment, there's over 150,000 square feet at CMS and over 70,000 square feet at LIS above what is needed to support that enrollment. And I think that's important to note as we look at the recommendation here later on in the presentation. The school board has known for some time that we would have some long-term debt from the high school expiring in 2023, and there would be an opportunity to make improvements to the facilities. To inform the development of a long-term plan, a demographic study was commissioned in 2018 to provide insight on our future enrollment. The study concluded that enrollment is projected to remain relatively stable over the next 10 to 15 years. But with that in mind, it's important to note that for enrollment to remain stable, the district will need between 50 and 100 new home starts each year. This is due to families with school-aged children remaining in their homes once their children get older and are no longer in school. In 2019, the district conducted a comprehensive facility study to outline high priority needs in our school buildings. The study itemized and prioritized needs by building at the highest level, or priority 1 items, estimated to be between $50 and $70 million. Most of this work is mechanical in nature and addresses temperature controls, electrical, plumbing, roofing, and fire protection. This is the work done below the floor and above the ceilings, work that nobody would be able to see, and work that doesn't address any teaching and learning environment improvements such as flooring, walls, ceilings, furniture, casework, and technology. Allocating resources on an item-by-item basis is a strategy that we've been using in recent years through our 3-year capital improvement process. This typically involves replacing roofs and paving, as well as replacement of chillers, water tanks, flooring, cafeteria, playground, media center, makerspace, just all the various improvements that you might need on a year-to-year basis. This past fall and winter, in the fall of 2020, we started working with a group of professionals to help design a comprehensive plan that would address our need over the next 20 years. So the recommendation that I'm going to outline tonight is a culmination of that work and provide solutions for safety, security, and environmental control concerns, along with teaching and learning enhancements for students and staff. As we started to work with our professionals this fall, we outlined a number of our needs and objectives to guide our work, wanting to reduce operational costs and maximize long-term efficiencies, continue to provide safe and secure learning environments, establishing equitable elementary learning environments, more opportunities for students at the middle level, and prevent expanded opportunities for students at the high school. In a perfect world, we'd look to renovate and enhance all of our schools, not only from an asset management and safety and security standpoint, but also to optimize our learning environment. In looking at solutions for the elementary level, we hope to establish equity in learning environments across the district by renovating all classrooms, including large group, small group, individualized and extended learning opportunities for students. We'll look to continue and expand upon enhancements that have already begun in our media centers and makerspaces, and we'll look to establish student support areas to address social emotional well-being. At the intermediate and middle level, we'll look to increase curricular and extracurricular opportunities for students, reducing school transitions, and improving the functionality of school buildings. At the high school, we'll address safety and security needs by introducing parking solutions for buses, students, staff, and the community, and developing a new drive to the south side of the building that will allow drive-up access to the entire facility. In addition, we'll look to provide new and expanded opportunities for students in performing arts, physical education, project-based learning, athletics, and extracurricular activities. In summary, the proposed solutions will offer a 20-year plan for our facility needs. I want to take a moment and emphasize that this recommendation is broad in scope and has been developed to assist in budget development. Many of the details of the recommendation will be addressed with Duneland staff and the greater school community at a time after financing is secured. The renovation includes Bailey, Brummett, Jackson, and Liberty Elementary schools will undergo interior renovations and small additions at Brummett, Jackson, and Liberty. Safety and security and social emotional well-being considerations will be addressed, and optimization of the teaching and learning environment for unique student groups and extended learning opportunities for whole group, small group, and personalized learning will be emphasized. The renovations will be to the extent that someone walking into the building will feel as if they're walking into a new school. A new Yost school is also proposed. The current Yost building is in need of significant mechanical system repairs. In addition, the current layout has limited expansion possibilities. When evaluating whether or not to renovate or build new, the cost of renovating Yost was 85% of the cost to build a new school. None of the other schools were over that 75% threshold, in which consideration would be given to building new versus renovating. Renovations and additions to Liberty Intermediate and Westchester Intermediate school buildings and campuses to accommodate students in grades 5 through 8. This recommendation is being driven in part by the corporation currently having excess space in 2 school buildings, Chesterton Middle and Liberty Intermediate, and reducing from 9 school buildings to 8, with the current Chesterton Middle School no longer housing students once the project is complete. In moving from 9 buildings to 8, operational costs will be reduced over time, and additionally, up to $30 million in renovation costs will be saved by not renovating one of our existing schools, in this case, Chesterton Middle. From a student perspective, renovating and expanding LIS and WIS to house students in grades 5 through 8 will reduce school transitions from 4 to 3 over the course of a student's career in the district and provide more curricular and extracurricular opportunities. The district will also offer full extracurricular programs at both schools with improvements to facilities in the arts, physical education, and athletics, both inside and outdoors. 6th grade students will now be able to participate in extracurricular opportunities only available currently to 7th and 8th grade students with our current grade configuration at CMS. Although 5th grade students will be in the same physical location as 8th grade students, the recommendation includes separate school within a school or grade level house concepts. Each house will have a designated entrance, office, principal, and school counselors located within a designated section of the building. District leadership, building principals, teachers, and staff are committed to educating students at the middle level differently than students at the elementary or high school level. The academic and social emotional needs of students at this age are unique and will be addressed appropriately. This is also true of students within the same school. In this instance, 5th grade students will be supported differently than 8th grade students. While facilities will be shared, there will be minimal interaction between students in the 5th and 6th grade house and the 7th and 8th grade house. And finally, the recommendation includes specialty upgrades at Chesterton High School. The new high school was built 22 years ago and is by far the most cost-efficient building in the district. The upgrades at the high school are to address emerging needs in the performing arts, robotics, physical education, project-based learning, athletics, and extracurricular activities. Before sharing a few concept drawings that provide visuals for what this work could entail, please keep in mind these drawings are just conceptual. Room specifics are likely to change once the design team starts receiving staff input. This slide provides an overview of floor plans at Liberty, Jackson, and Brummett. These 3 schools currently all have unique classroom configurations in which students are grouped into 4 classroom pods, with students having to walk through a classroom to get to another. This presents a number of safety and security challenges that we'll look to solve during the renovation process. As you can see on the map, the pod concept would still remain, but one of the 4 classrooms would become a space for extended learning. You'll notice that each of the schools have small additions to support unique student needs, such as special education, gifted and talented, English language learners, and title services. Restrooms will also be relocated and refurbished, and extended learning opportunities at each grade level will also be addressed, with media center and makerspace areas continuing to serve as the hub of the school. So we move to the next slide and take a look at Bailey and a new Yost school. We'll continue looking to establish equity and learning environments across the district by providing exteriors for extended learning and special education. This will be done in large, small, and individualized learning spaces. And as mentioned previously, these are just preliminary drawings that can be adjusted and will be adjusted once the design team starts meeting with school staff. The drawing depicting a slide for a new Yost school is a replica of a new elementary school that the Gibraltar design team built and opened in Hobart in the fall of 2020. In addition, the Gibraltar and Skillman team designed and opened the new Headland Elementary School in Valparaiso in the fall of 2017. At this point in time, we're only looking at site requirements and budget projections for a new elementary school. So this image is just a placeholder. Site selection and school design would take place after funding is secured for the project. As we review the concept drawing for Westchester, you'll notice there are renovations and additions to accommodate grade level houses with new entrances and offices for 5th and 6th grade and 7th and 8th grade. The center of the building would still include an expanded cafeteria, and media center, along with enhancements for STEM, project-based learning, and robotics. Renovations and enhancements will also be made in the arts and physical education areas of the building. The Westchester floor plan provides a good contrast to our current Chesterton Middle School floor plan. Over 60 years ago, Chesterton Middle School was built to be a high school and has undergone multiple additions through the years. 20 years ago, the building was identified as a middle school. However, no specific changes were made to accommodate middle learning environment concepts, such as grade level teams. The school was built to be departmentalized with an English wing, a science wing, a math wing, etc. And as a result, the layout would be extremely difficult to adjust into a two-house campus for students in grades 5 through 8. In addition, the campus has numerous traffic and parking issues. Finally, many mechanical systems need to be replaced, and this building has disproportionately high ongoing maintenance expenses. Overall, we don't believe it would be cost-effective to reconfigure and renovate Chesterton Middle. In budgeting for the project, we will set aside dollars to redevelop the CMS property, including the demolition of large parts of the building. But with that in mind, we look forward to working with the Duneland community and our construction professionals to determine which components of the current CMS campus may be preserved. And it's our hope to maintain those portions of the building that will be used by active community and student groups and organizations. In looking at what the Liberty intermediate renovations might include, you'll notice that a significant addition is proposed for the south side of the building that could house 7th and 8th grade students, along with an auxiliary gym. There's also an expanded cafeteria and separate 5th and 6th grade and 7th and 8th grade offices for students, similar to Westchester. Site recommendations for traffic flow and parking will still need to take place, as I think we need to consider separate parking lots for the elementary and intermediate school. When the project is complete, all school buildings will have new interiors. In addition, all mechanical systems and safety and security upgrades will be replaced and modernized. The operational savings will come from utility costs and no longer having to maintain the extra building. And we expect student enrollment to remain constant. The recommendation would have minimal impact on staffing, as there will still be the same need for teachers, bus drivers, custodians, nurses, and various other support staff to provide exceptional services for students. The proposed work is expected to take 3 years from the start of construction to completion. In the meantime, we'll work with teachers and staff to develop a process to transition current middle school personnel to the Westchester and Liberty campuses. Additionally, we'll look to eliminate traveling teachers and staff and provide for the possibility of additional course offerings at both 5 through 8 schools. The proposed work at the high school is designated on this slide by a set of letters and numbers. Letter A outlines renovations and additions to the performing arts wing of the building, increasing space for student enrollment in large group ensemble, small group ensemble, and individual practice areas. A new entrance and separate loading area to accommodate students and families outside of the school day, and also travel considerations for competing groups. Letter B, in 2 parts of the diagram, on the far southeast side of the campus and then on the lower west side of the campus, would house our competitive robotics teams. The corporation currently has competitive robotics teams at the elementary, intermediate, and middle level without any space at the high school to accommodate this emerging program as students matriculate to CHS. In addition, new project-based lab space will be developed in the area that currently houses the weight room. Letters C and D include a field house expansion, flexible multi-use space for the CHS gymnastics team to practice and host competitions. This will allow the field house to be accessible for physical education classes and athletic teams during the winter months when groups are unable to go outside. A new performance lab or weight room will also be developed to house weight equipment, cardio, and life fitness equipment to be able to host small and large group activities. Letter E outlines some work that would be conducted in the main gym with the bleachers and provide mezzanine access to the south side upper balcony. Currently, the only way to access the south side gym deck balcony is to pull out the bleachers and climb up the stairs. Number 1 outlines where we would put that outer drive on the south side of the school and also look for expanded parking opportunities that also could extend along the west side of the building. And then number 2 outlines potential improvements to soccer, baseball, softball, tennis, the pool, and marching band practice and competition venues that may include bleachers, lighting, storage, playing surfaces, restroom access, and concessions. The goal is to take steps so all students have access for practice and competition at the conclusion of the school day. For example, currently our boys soccer program practices at Dogwood Park after school. We'll look to improve our current soccer venue so that student athlete needs are being met on campus. The same is true with different unique challenges to specific teams in tennis, baseball, softball, football, track and field, swimming, and marching band. Okay, I'm going to stop the share for a second because that's a lot on the improvements before we get to any of the financing part of this. Because as you can tell, it's a fairly comprehensive plan that's going to take 3 years and a considerable investment. So any questions at this point or comments, concerns? Sure, Bob?
So I have 2 questions actually. So we're gonna lose an auditorium in all this? Because right now we only have the middle school and the high school. And so I didn't see any other auditorium being added. So at this point, we'll just have a high school auditorium.
Yeah, so a couple of things with that. As we look at the improvements at the Westchester and Liberty campuses, we want to be able to host grade and age level appropriate performing arts, let's say shows, whether it's a play, whether it's a musical. So we're looking at the current Liberty stage right now and seeing if that can be renovated and with an auxiliary gym on the other side where we can have a large group assembly to support a show. It's a little more challenging at Westchester because the Westchester stage is located in the cafeteria and it really isn't conducive for any type of large group setting. So there is a concept drawing where we're looking at putting a stage in at Westchester and extending that auxiliary gym where we could have a crowd of 150, 200 people to watch a musical or a play or a choir concert in the evening. As we think about Chesterton Middle and parts of the facility that we may want to preserve, I think the obvious ones that come to mind are Goldsboro Gym, the auditorium, and the pool. And there are other parts of the building that we very likely may tear down or remove. So we have had conversations with the town of Chesterton. We look forward to other conversations with potential community partners on how we may preserve parts of the building. And really aren't looking to make a profit on that. We just would like to reduce our operational costs. So I think that we could see something like Goldsboro Gym and some of those health classrooms near it being occupied by a community partner, tearing down parts of the building in the middle where it could become green space, or you could see something like a skating rink or an amphitheater in that spot, and then moving to the auditorium and looking for ways to preserve the auditorium and then also the swimming pool. So I think that those are definitely assets that not just for the school district, but also the community would look to preserve. And over the next 2 to 3 years, we'd hope to have some of those conversations.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was going to ask about the pool next. So that's the other thing you're going to lose is building of the swimming program that's been so successful. Is if you just start at 9th grade on, it doesn't give kids a chance to participate early on. Anyways.
Yeah, I think the pool is a little bit different than the auditorium from the standpoint that we put some significant resources into the pool in recent years, and we do look at the pool as being a driving factor in some of the success of the programs. So we have a definite interest in preserving that pool for our swim club, for our master swim program, and for our emerging swimmers. And whatever partnership that we would look to get into, we would look to protect those interests and hope that the community would continue to find great value in that facility.
Cool, thank you.
Sure.
If you have a question for Chip, just make sure you unmute yourself and feel free to ask any questions. And then Chip, are you going to talk about the financials and regarding building this and what it's going to cost and kind of like the next steps on that as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other questions before I move on?
I do have a
I've got,
question.
I've got one.
Sure.
Do you have an idea where Yoast is going to be located?
Yeah, great question. In coming up with this recommendation, we needed to build a budget and a plan to build the new Yoast school on its current site in the event that we're unable to find a suitable site elsewhere. And finding a suitable site elsewhere may be a significant challenge. I think that the school board and those that we've talked to believe that we need to have a school in Porter and
Yes.
in a neighborhood environment. The tricky part about that is that there just aren't any spots there in Porter that can support a school site. There's the property across the street, the old Brickyard site, right there across from the fire station. We looked preliminarily at some property over by State Park Little League that runs into the Shirley Heights Land Trust. And, the issue there is that it starts to get wet.
Yeah.
We looked at the old water park site up on 20, and there are some plots along there. And the feedback that just, again, informally we're receiving is that now we're up there on 20 and not sure there's a whole lot of support for a school up there with our current Yoast community. So we would be prepared to demolish the current Yoast, move students to the middle school for a year, and build a new school on the current site. And they can do all that in 15 months. So as soon as the school year would end, say in late May, early June, we'd look to demolish that building right away and then look to open it 15 months later or so in August. So
I like that idea.
That would be our default.
I like that idea the best. Keep it where it is.
Yeah, it's really at a nice location. And
it is.
Anytime you move a site somewhere else, there's a number of issues that tend to pop up either in the neighborhood or just bringing the utilities and everything else to a new site.
Yeah, and it's a nice. There's a lot of kids that walk to school. It's a nice neighborhood school. Clearly, all my kids went there, so.
Yeah. Well, the feedback that we get from some Yoast alums is that in many ways it's almost like a badge of honor to have gone through Yoast. And if I would take you through some of the mechanical rooms and some of the bowels of the school, you would definitely understand why we need to look at a new Yoast school.
No, I get that. I'm sure it's like the second oldest school, right?
Yes, and it's built up on the hill with multiple levels, and really kind of a challenging site for a renovation and any addition.
Yeah.
And then Chip, I know Maria has a question as well.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mike.
Don't know so much of it's a question, just a positive comment about the field house. When that building was in the planning process, myself and the late Larry James, who was our track coach, were on the building committee. And we went through a couple years of meetings. And the last one we walked into, the field house was dramatically cut, unbeknownst to anybody that was in that meeting. And the thing that was cut was the size of that track and all of the gymnastics area. And so obviously Maria and I have a
vested interest in
the gymnastics.
Since we coached 25 years that
speaking
program.
For the PE staff there at the high school, when it's gymnastics season, which is November through the last weekend, the floor exercise mat takes up one quarter of the entire field house. It's in one of the middle two basketball courts. And one, it disrupts all of the phys ed activities during the day. And two, in the evenings, you have gymnastics out there in the middle of the field house. You have basketballs flying around on one side. You have pole vault running in the opposite direction of the
vaulters.
gymnastics vaulters, and you have softball going on all at the same time, and shot put. And so it's just great to see that it's being considered being put back into that area. And I know I've talked to some of the high school people, or they talked to me about maybe making it 2 levels in a portion of that we call it the annex, and using that for office space. And it just sounds like a great idea for that end of the building.
Well, Mike and Maria, I think that, the feedback that we received as we were looking at the high school, that there are some emerging needs that we need to address, but you're absolutely right. There's some things that we need to right size that maybe didn't get done for whatever reasons. And I think, to be honest, being part of a high school design 20 years ago in that area in a neighboring community, sometimes those projects need to be brought in on these tight budgets, and you have to hit a number. And the things that tend to get cut are field houses, auditoriums, and swimming pools. Yeah. So, some of those things that maybe wanted to do 22 years ago might have an opportunity here to get it, solve some of those issues, and as well as look at some of our emerging spaces. So, I don't mean to say that the high school hasn't served the community well. I think it's a wonderful facility, and spending most of my career in a neighboring community with a high school of the same size, I'm really impressed with how the construction of Chesterton High School, it's holding up really, really well. But yes, there are some opportunities there in the field house and performing arts that we need to address. For example, in the performing arts area, the ceilings they're all 8 feet in our ensemble rooms, and we should have 20-foot ceilings there with acoustical treatments, and really the idea that our directors and our coaches have the best facility to do what they need to do to maximize the talents of our kids. And that's really the approach that we want to take.
You walk through that building, and it's hard to believe that it's 22, almost 22 years old. It's in
great shape.
It looks like it's in great shape. And we hosted the conference gymnastics championship and the sectional championship this year, and the coaches and the administrators that come in, they still have a hard time believing that this was the in gymnastics wise anyways, the 22nd consecutive year we hosted a sectional in there. They're still amazed at how well the building looks, and the respect that the building has and upkeep has gotten from the students and the staff. It's just outwardly looks like a great facility still at this point. So that's just a compliment to everyone at the high school.
Thank you, Mike. And Pam, you've got your hand up. You can tell you work at Bailey Elementary.
I do work at Bailey Elementary. So I don't know that I have a specific question. I know Bailey's not going to have any and doesn't have a need for additions, just a lot of interior work and stuff like that. And I know that everybody at the staff at Bailey has been so excited at the thought of, taking what is also a pretty old school and bringing it up to date and prettying it up. And so I know everybody really appreciates the fact that you're going to be spending hopefully some time and money making our school a better place. But just a suggestion, sorry, pickles, is maybe.
I thought that was Rob.
No, maybe, an area for the instructional aides to, like maybe call it a spa or something like that. Just for our, no, okay, never mind. I'm just kidding.
You know what? A spa is probably just a little bit more money. You might as well just go for it.
Place for a pedicure in between classes or something like that.
Well, Pam, I do get your humor there, but I think one of the things that as we look at the concept drawings in the elementary schools and we look to establish equity in the schools, I think it sometimes is difficult for people to truly understand what happens in those elementary schools, in those small group opportunities in which we're working with kids. And you walk into our current situation and you see a classroom with a bunch of dividers up and what looks to be garage sale furniture and just classrooms that are kind of falling apart. So that's what you see in these extended rooms and these flex spaces, where we can now take a classroom of 24, turn it into some small groups, and really provide every opportunity by grade level. There isn't just one room for that to occur in the building. Every grade level has that opportunity. So yes, I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, we are too. And thank you so much.
One quick question on Bailey. Since I was there 38 and a half years, I taught kindergarten there. We need more bathrooms at Bailey.
That's true.
Well, I would agree that, just a kind of a quick story, as we were working with our professionals this fall, we really didn't know how some of the cost estimates were going to come back as they were looking at renovation versus a new build. And, everyone was kind of, had their opinions of which schools might, we might need to think about not renovating because it just wasn't going to be worth the investment. I had some concerns about Bailey because it is one of our older buildings. Shoot, we just stopped burning trash at Bailey a couple of years ago.
Right. I know.
Right. So incidentally, though, Yost was the only one that came back even close to that 75% threshold. All the other schools were at about 50 to 65% renovating versus building new. But as you're talking about those costs, each of the elementary buildings will run between $8 and $14 million to renovate. Wow. The Liberty Intermediate, Westchester, and CMS all would have been $22 to $30 million to renovate. So as we were getting into the discussions of, we understand we can create some operational efficiencies by moving from 9 to 8, which building would it be? Well, it really came down to CMS and Bailey. And explain that a couple of different ways, that if we would have renovated, say, CMS and Liberty Intermediate, and they would have been the middle schools, we probably would have taken the Bailey student population and moved it to Westchester, to where that would have been an elementary school, and then we would have looked to vacate Bailey. Mm-hmm. But the cost of renovating CMS, the layout, all of the parking issues that we have there just was going to be cost prohibitive. And then that Bailey came in at a number where it wasn't going to be $22 million, which is what it will cost to build a new elementary school of that size, versus an $8 to $12 million renovation. It was still very practical to renovate Bailey.
Jackie,
Makes
you had
sense.
a question?
Unmute. Yes, I do. You spoke particularly with the elementary schools that one of the reasons for some of the upgrades is to improve the arts and physical education components of those schools, but those are the areas where programming was cut. Does that indicate that those programs will be enhanced with these better schools?
Meaning at the elementaries or the intermediate middle level?
It seems like music, arts, and physical ed just keep getting cut to 20 minutes a day or something, or less. And so what's the need for that facility if you don't have the programming to support it?
Yeah, so currently we have on our elementary schedule, our related arts, where students will go to music, art, and PE. In a perfect world, we'll look to extend our elementary school day by 30 minutes. We believe that students are not in school long enough at the elementary level. The reason that we can't do that right now is simply transportation. We don't have enough buses to run the loop that we need to get students picked up and dropped off. So without going down off on a tangent about transportation, over the next 3 years, we're going to look to increase our fleet by about 10 buses, which then we would need to increase by about 10 drivers. In reducing from 9 schools to 8, we think we can make those changes to the elementary school day and also limit the amount of time that students spend on buses, transfer from one bus to another, spend time in the school before and after school before they get on a bus, and really just provide a more efficiency and a better student and family experience. So no, there is not any look to reduce any of the time in the related arts at the elementary or the intermediate middle level. And in fact, at the 5 through 8 buildings, we're looking to run a full complement of both curricular and extracurricular opportunities of what students are experiencing now at the middle level. So you'll see 2 middle school bands, 2 middle school orchestras, 2 middle school choirs, more opportunities for kids in that, 2 basketball teams, 2 wrestling teams. You know, and I don't know that it necessarily means we'll have a better product when students get to the high school. And I think that kind of misses the point. I think it's really about just more opportunities for kids, and as they look to find their niche in different areas. So that's a part of this that we're really excited about.
Yes, Mr. Bob?
One more question.
Bob?
So we didn't talk about Jackson Elementary at all, I don't think. Maybe I missed it. But anyways, so where do you see the Duneland growth at? Because I know at one time everybody thought it was going to go east, and I don't think it went as east as much as people thought it was. And so that's kind of changed the whole dynamic of the school system. So I was just wondering where, based on all the surveys and stuff you did, where you see the community growth being relative to where I guess the schools are.
And Chip, before you answer that, I had a question that's similar to Bob. Is NERC is projecting by 2050 that there's going to be a 36% population growth in Porter County. So that's going to be explosive. We're already seeing national housing companies that are coming in. And I know that's hitting Morgan Township, Washington Township, but it's also coming in the north. So when your guys were looking at the demographics, were they aware of that? That was a projection in terms of Porter County having an explosion of growth?
Yeah, I think they were aware of that. And I think that the plan with the additions to Brummett, Liberty Elementary, and Jackson, you might say, well, why do we need to be looking at additions if enrollment is expected to be relatively flat for the next 10 years or so? One, I think we're looking at a 20-year solution, so we have to be able to accommodate that growth. Two, the learning environment that we would promote today is different than the learning environment that we all experienced in schools. And I think that it currently, the plan accounts for that. But if we get some unexpected growth, some of those extended learning spaces can then be turned into classrooms. And as we get, a lot of unexpected growth, well, then our AV goes up, and then we have an opportunity to address that in different ways. Bob, to your question about where we see where that growth occurring, it's a good question. I think it depends on who you ask, but I think most would say it's either on the south or the east side of the district, either in Liberty or Jackson Township. One of the things that I think we will need to address, we won't look to do it until after we're able to secure financing, is to look to establish enrollment equity, specifically at our middle schools. Currently, Westchester Intermediate has about 150 to almost 200 more students than Liberty Intermediate. So if we're able to secure this funding in the spring, I envision a fairly large task force being formed with not only school officials, but also community members to look at a way to balance our enrollment at the 2 middle schools. And in doing so, what we'd like to do is move about 100 students to the Jackson campus. And in doing so, that moves those students then to Liberty Middle, which then creates that enrollment equity. Now, how to get 100 students to Jackson? That's where it's going to get interesting, because there's a number of different permutations to do that. And, it's something I really don't want to engage in until after we're able to see if we can secure the funding. But then I think we would form a task force in the fall, come up with a recommendation, and then, maybe in the winter of 2022, look to act on that recommendation. And then you give families a good 2 years to, be grandfathered into that and make a move. And you try and do that with as minimal disruption as possible. I hope that answers that.
Well, these were great questions. So yes, Chip will let you go on to your second half. I think probably which includes some of the finances.
Okay, great. I'm going to stop the video and see if we can get that presented here. Okay, everybody see the screen again okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to do just kind of a quick little review on school funding. And I think this slide just does a pretty nice job of outlining our 2021 budget. And this year we ran we're running a $71 million budget with 77% coming from the Education and Operation Funds. This consists of dollars coming from the state based on student enrollment. Specifically, the education fund dollars are spent on personnel and programs that directly impact or work with students, while operation fund dollars come from taxpayer levy and spent on personnel, supplies, and equipment that do not directly impact or work with students. We also have our referendum fund, which accounts for 11% of our budget. This is the fund that the community supported through a property tax increase in May 2019, making up, again, $7.7 million of the budget used to fund personnel and programs that otherwise might not be available due to inadequate funding from the Indiana General Assembly. And then we have our debt service fund funded by property taxes, and this is used to finance our capital improvement loans. In 2021, 12% of the corporation budget comes from the debt service fund. As I mentioned previously, in why we're making this recommendation now, I think this slide does a pretty nice job of showing how in 2023, construction bonds for Chesterton High School will be paid in full. As a result, the school corporation will have the capacity to make new loan payments of approximately $8 million per year without raising school taxes. If we don't capture these dollars for capital improvements to our schools, other taxing units will have an opportunity to develop projects with those dollars, which will in turn limit the scope of school corporation projects in the future. In short, this isn't a situation where we can reasonably offer the tax savings back to the taxpayer. It isn't ours to give. If we don't recapture the debt, another public taxing unit is likely to grab it. So in essence, our needs aren't going to go away. And if we would allow another taxing unit to grab this funding, we'll be left at looking at alternative ways to fund our needs, which could mean a capital fund referendum that significantly raises the tax rate. With that in mind, our current and prior school board has put the district in a very good situation in that we have an opportunity to address our long-term facility needs with minimal impact to the tax rate. Okay, so here's what we're proposing. The improvements outlined are proposed to cost $168 million with a loan repayment over 19 years and 6 months. That's outlined there in the top row of the slide. The increase to the school tax rate is just under 9 cents. That's on the bottom row of the slide. The reason for the recommendation at $168 million is that a comprehensive plan that addresses facility needs for all students at that amount couldn't be developed. Let me rephrase that. The corporation could borrow up to $110 million over the same period without any increase to school taxes. But the reason for the recommendation at 168 is that a comprehensive plan to address our needs for all students couldn't be developed. We would end up having to make a choice between the elementary improvements or the intermediate and middle level improvements, and trying to keep the existing buildings going on the typical 3-year capital improvement plan budget. This wouldn't be practical as our buildings have immediate needs, and the schools, if left in their current state, will only cost more to renovate or build new into the future. The other option would be to continue to piecemeal the improvements on a year-to-year basis to address the 50 to 70 million outlined as high priority in our facility plan. And while we could do this in $5 to $15 million increments under current financing laws to keep the tax rate steady, this would only include improvements to mechanical systems and not any learning environment improvements. The recommendation as presented addresses student and facility needs at the elementary, middle, and high school level, takes advantage of record low interest rates, offers a 3-year construction timeline, and has minimal impact to the school tax rate. This slide shows the total borrowing amount of $168 million, an estimated increase to the tax rate at 8.9 cents. And then as you look to the bottom part of the graphic, in which on row 3, you see the $190,400 home value. That's the mean home value in the district. For a $190,000 home, the increase to the school tax rate would be $6.80 per month, or $81.63 a year. Those previous slides outline the loan amount and the individual impact to the taxpayer. Those costs are estimates due to other factors, the big one being assessed valuation. This chart provides a historical look at the Duneland school tax rate from 2008 through 2021. You'll notice a spike in 2008. This is due to financing laws that were adjusted in the state legislature. Since 2009, the rate has remained relatively flat, with a slight increase in 2013 and 14. That rate is anticipated in 2023 and beyond to be projected to be less than what it was in 13-14, but slightly more than it is this year in 2021. But over the long term, the school tax rate is projected to remain relatively flat. And finally, this chart shows how the Duneland school tax rate compares to the state average, and also some of our local counterparts with similar student and community demographics. You'll notice that the Duneland school tax rate provides tremendous value in comparison. While there's not any actual data to show the impact of school renovations on property values, we can look to our neighboring communities who have undergone similar renovation programs. These communities have all seen an increase in their property values. We also know that our schools oftentimes are the determining factor in the decision-making process for not only homeowners to stay in the district, but also to attract potential homeowners from outside the district. And I hope that you'll agree that this project will not only benefit the programming in our schools, but enhance property values throughout the community. At our March school board meeting, our Board of Trustees unanimously voted 5-0 to accept the recommendation and advertise the first notice of preliminary determination hearing is required by statute for our April 5th board meeting, and then tentatively scheduled our second preliminary determination and project hearing notice to be advertised as required by statute for April 12th to secure financing. Once financing is secured, we would start working with staff and community stakeholder groups in the late summer and fall during the design process. This is the part of the process where the concept drawings are turned into reality, with construction to begin in early 2022. I think it goes without saying that in explaining the financing process, if we have that project hearing on April 12th, what that will do, it will open up a 30-day petition remonstrance period, in which if there is opposition to the plan between April 12th and May 17th, and someone opts to go to the county and secure a petition and then secure enough signatures on that petition, it could cause us to go to referendum. And a referendum then we would look to put that on a ballot in November, in which we would move forward with a vote similar to what we've done in 2019, and then in 2012 before that with the operating referendum. All right, I'm going to stop the share and now look for some feedback or take some questions.
So Chip, what's the pulse that you've been in terms of the community, in terms of the feedback that you've received thus far, in terms of the taxes going up slightly? It's not a lot, but what has been the feedback?
Well, I apologize. I'm going to give a bit of a long-winded answer because I think there's about three big things in play. I think the first is that the Chesterton Tribune is not printing on a daily basis, and so many people in the community are used to getting their news from the Tribune. So, we're doing a lot of messaging like this, because we want to get the word out. We want to be transparent. We want to answer questions, and not only those that are supportive of the plan, but those that have questions or concerns or might be in opposition. I'm looking to meet with those people individually and share parts of the plan and at least explain why we're opting to do what we are. I think that another factor is that once folks realize that we could go for 110 million and not raise the tax rate at all, but we would have to leave out a significant portion of our student enrollment and the improvements that they would see. They seem to grasp that in going for 168, we can have a comprehensive solution that is a good 20-year plan that's ultimately going to save us money down the road. I think the other thing is that once people learn about how a different taxing unit could potentially grab those dollars, and that we can't just give that back to the taxpayer because it's not ours to give, I think they understand that a little bit more and say, whoa, that 168 million, it's a big number and there's a lot to digest in this proposal. But I really think once people start to digest it, that's the beauty of the proposal, and that it's comprehensive. And we can walk into 7 of our 8 buildings, when we're done, and they will look like new buildings. And it's needed. And we can provide that 20-year solution that I think we can all feel good about, not only on the teaching and learning side, but also from a fiscal responsibility side.
Any other questions? Yes, Maria.
I just wanted to say that, frequently going into Valpo schools, when you walk in now, as opposed to before the renovation, sometimes it's difficult to even imagine how the building was in the past. It's such a wonderful uptick. And perhaps people that are opposed to that, if ever there was a chance for them to see some of these improvements that were placed at Valpo, they may be more apt to say, hey, I want my kid to have that, because it's really impressive and they've done a great job and they continue to improve over at Valpo. That was one thing. The one thing that I keep sticking in my head is right now, it's a totally different subject, is state funding and the crisis for public education right now with state funding. And what can our school board and administration do to combat this? And is there a plan in place?
Yeah, well, Maria, great questions. And I think that, Lorelei, you had alluded to early in the meeting, about some plans for the school district and a vision for the school district down the road. I think one of the things that we feel very strongly about is, just the reality that we are in competition for kids. And, we see that theme consistently emerge from the state legislature, in which dollars are following students. And, we look at our work, not only from the facility side, but also the educational programming side, that we want to be a district of choice, not only for the families that live in the community and encouraging them to stay, but also that others that may be looking at Northwest Indiana and looking for a place to come and reside, and we want to be attractive to those families. I think that education has changed significantly in the last 20 years, and in many ways it's due to the use of technology. And I think we're doing well in that respect, but I think we can do even better. And some of the funding structures that are becoming available to us, whether it's from the legislature, whether it's from some of the federal stimulus dollars that will come our way, whether it could be in a capital improvements that the community supports, or from our operating referendum, that I think the reality is that we live and we work in a community that supports education and has always supported education. As a result, I think we'll continue to be strong, but keeping in mind, back to that previous point, we're in competition for students. And I think, we're in competition for teachers, we're in competition for staff. And I think we're all fortunate to, again, be in a community that supports education to the level that we do. And, we take our role serious in looking to not only preserve that, but also to build upon that. And I think there's some opportunities not only with this plan for facilities, but also as we look to leverage our learning environment, that will just keep getting better and better.
Any other questions? While we have a Chip here, this is fantastic. It's an opportunity to really take a deeper dive into the education. Yes, Mike.
Just, Chip, you've alluded to a couple times, if we do not secure this type of funding, it could go to different taxing units. Who might that be? Who could take the money in lieu of the Duneland School Corporation?
Well, Mike, I want to be careful not to pit the school corporation against anybody else, right?
That's why he wasn't saying it.
but I'll tell you a story about one of our neighboring districts. And in fact, we have any Lake Central grads on the call, or anyone from over in that neck of the woods? So I'm just gonna maybe tell it how it is. A few years ago, Lake Central had some debt coming off of a renovation of Kaler Middle School, and they opted not to try and recapture that debt. And the Dyer Police Department then did recapture that debt and built a brand new police station right across the street from Kaler Middle School, over there just off of Route 30 on Hart Street.
Yeah.
About 5-6 years later, the school corporation decided that they needed to do some major improvements at the high school and launched a referendum campaign, and it lost.
Yeah, I did know
And
that.
then they had to wait 4 or 5 more years. Then they redid another referendum campaign. They eventually did it, but it strung out for about 15 years, and then ultimately had to raise the tax rate. Now, the Lake Central tax rate is the lowest in the area, and that's an AV, I guess, anomaly, just because of all the people in the Dyer, Cherville, St. John area. That's what could happen. So it could be a library board, it could be a fire station, it could be a police board, it could be the county. There's a number of different taxing units that could dip into that. And if we would let that tax rate go, that's just good practice on their part to look to come in and grab it. And we'd be looking to do the same if some of them were letting part of their tax rate go, where we could make improvements without impacting the tax rate.
Yep. Thanks.
Yes, Jackie.
I have a quick question. You said that, and I was glad to hear that we don't have to have a referendum unless someone or a group of people were to, file a petition against the project and look for signatures. Is that a big number? Like, it's unlikely to happen, or how many signatures? Is it only like 100? Do you know?
Well, it's a good question. That number's around 500. And when we talk about, maybe opponents to the proposal, I've met with a gentleman that, through the years has traditionally been against some of these school public financing projects, and talked with him on the phone a couple of times. And I told him the other day, I said, I'm hoping that you'll come to the public meeting and say that while you don't necessarily agree with how this is, transpired with a demographic study in 18, a facility plan in 19, us working with professionals in the summer and the fall, while I would call that good strategic planning, you might call that a lack of transparency. I hope that you'll stand up and say, what, this is a good plan. It's fiscally responsible. It's going to save taxpayers money in the long run. And, maybe we'll have to agree to disagree on some points, but I welcome those conversations with folks that want to oppose the plan or maybe don't understand it. And if at the end of the day we need to agree to disagree, that's okay too. I just hope they don't go pick up a petition from the county. And that's part of the difference in this, handling it this way versus a referendum. We've all become relatively maybe conditioned to operate in the referendum environment, where we walk door to door and we encourage people to get out to the polls. This is different in that we want to be transparent, we want to get our message out, but we don't necessarily want to walk door to door, because we may walk right into a hornet's nest and rile somebody up that just doesn't need to be riled up. So some have asked, what can we do to help? What can we do to support this? And I think that the simple answer is, when asked about it, go ahead and provide some details that now you're in the know on on what we're being proposed and why to do that. And if you run into anybody that you think is in opposition or that would benefit from an individual conversation, please send them my way. And happy to meet with anybody, and hopefully I can turn them into our point of view.
And Chip, when do they have to have the 500 signatures by?
So that period would open right after that second project hearing. And we have it tentatively scheduled for April 12th, but I say tentatively because if we go to the first hearing on April 5th and we sense that there's opposition, we may delay that second hearing to have a chance to meet with the opposition and see if we can settle it down.
Mhm.
And then because as soon as you have that second hearing, the next day, the 30-day period starts in which the petition not only could be, the signatures can be collected. So sticking on that current time frame, if we have that second hearing on April 12th, then the 13th of April would start that 30-day period, which would conclude on May the 17th.
Okay.
So, really in terms of anything coming from the district, you can expect it to be relatively quiet. We're not going to look to stir anything up here over the next 2 months, and hope that we can get through the project hearing and that 30-day petition remonstrance period without opposition.
Okay. Any other questions for Chip? This has been a very educational time, and I know we're at 7:41, but I want to make sure we have an opportunity for everybody to ask any questions. Okay, well, Chip, you did a very thorough job, so thank you so much.